with Annabelle Hudson.
Hello and welcome to the first edition of DRC News. This new program aims to bring you some insight into what Dubbo Regional Council is doing throughout the region and to showcase the great work that business and community groups are doing in partnership with Council. As the regional media landscape gets smaller, it's often a lot harder for regional newsrooms to cover the important day-to-day work Council is doing in the community, with the community and for the community. DRC News is here to bridge that gap and keep you informed. Thanks for joining us. Well, Boxing Day sales in Sydney's CBD were much more subdued this year due to COVID-19, with most bargain hunters following the government's advice to avoid crowded areas. Not surprisingly, Dubbo retailers who opened for Boxing Day sales saw solid trade through the doors thanks to a lower COVID-19 risk compared to the major cities. As a premier regional shopping destination, locals and visitors alike certainly didn't miss out on some great post-Christmas bargains right here in Dubbo.
While there were no scenes of the Boxing Day sales rush that we've historically seen in the bigger cities before COVID-19 came to Australia, some major retailers in Dubbo still open their doors at 7 a.m. on Boxing Day in anticipation of post-Christmas shoppers. And because of the great work by our communities and retailers that have seen the threat of COVID-19 so far kept at bay, the quiet start to the region's Boxing Day sales got very busy by lunchtime.
Dubbo always does well when it comes to Boxing Day sales, but particularly this year because everyone knows that Dubbo's got all of those big major stores that the big regional and city places have. But this year, with so many different visitors here, it's going right off. In fact, the Dubbo economy through retail is absolutely booming.
Some major retailers were reporting record sales and very high numbers of regional and interstate customers coming through their doors throughout the day. If there was a bargain to be had, it was easily found in Dubbo. Despite drought, COVID-19 and the global economic downturn, the Dubbo region's economy is doing quite well, making the local government area appealing to those wishing to move out of the city to a regional city.
Things are looking up here. There's no doubt about that. In fact, our economy is booming. Our economy is booming so much that we have literally the lowest unemployment rate in Australia at just 1.4%. And there's a mixture of things doing that. It is our fantastic agricultural sector, but the fact that we've got so many tourists coming here and our building industry is booming all points to a fantastic year for Dubbo.
While the Sydney CBD streets were mostly empty, it's scenes like this in Dubbo, filmed by our DRC TV crew, that caught the attention of national media. It is that national media exposure that is showing millions of Australians why the region is a great place to visit and an even greater place to live. Andrew Parsons, DRC News.
With regional and interstate tourists either heading to or heading through the Dubbo region leading up to and over the Christmas New Year period, visitor numbers have been at record levels. The ease of getting to the region and its COVID-safe environment are contributing factors behind such good visitor numbers. Two of several major attractions owned and operated by Council have enjoyed strong visitor numbers over recent months: the Old Dubbo Jail in the city centre and the Wellington Caves complex in Wellington. Joining me to discuss recent visitor numbers and what's been happening and what's planned for 2021, Julie Webster, the Operations Coordinator from Old Dubbo Jail, and Michelle Tonkins from the Wellington Caves Complex Operations. Julie, let's start with you. What were visitor numbers like leading into Christmas versus this time last year?
This time last year we were sitting at around 2,500 visitors for the month of December, and we've increased over 100% of that again, and well over 5,200 for the month of December, which is amazing.
Where were most of your visitors from? Has it been a good mix of regional, city and interstate visitors?
Mostly regional and city, not a lot of interstate, so still that tentative travel period for interstate, worried about what's happening and day-to-day changes with COVID. Speaking to a lot of the interstate visitors, they've been on the road for a few weeks, so they're still a bit tentative about moving around too much, but definitely city visitors looking to get out for those regional breaks.
What's happening at the moment at the jail? You've got some major redevelopment works underway. What can visitors expect from the Old Dubbo Jail in 2021?
2021 is pretty exciting, so our stage 1 redevelopment looks to be completed by the end of February. So our Gallows Gallery will be open sort of mid to late February. A lot of the works around the site for stage 1 have been completed already. We're just waiting for some multimedia to be pushed in the next couple of weeks. And stage 2 will sort of start to happen towards the end of 2021. And that's another exciting part for the jail being opened up into the Main Street area.
Michelle, a beautiful new multi-million-dollar state-of-the-art visitor experience centre opened in Wellington at the Caves last year, but of course we had drought and then COVID-19. What did you change so you could still allow visitors to enjoy the great caves and the complex there?
Well, obviously 2020 was definitely a challenging year, but we were able to still keep the place open and visitors coming through. We did have to reduce our tour numbers and we had to close a few caves, but what we're most proud of is that we actually opened up a brand new experience, which is our fossil finding sessions in our Discovery Lab. So visitors of all ages can come in and learn about the Australian megafauna, and they actually get to dig through some sediment that has been taken out of our fossil and phosphate mine and discover some prehistoric bones dating back to about 800,000 years ago. So we were really excited to open up that new product, and it's been really popular with all of our visitors.
So what's actually at the complex for visitors to enjoy? Are the caves a great place to visit in summer?
Absolutely. So the caves themselves stay at a constant temperature at around 17 to 18 degrees all year round. So it's a great cool escape during those hotter days. You can also come in to our Caves Cafe and grab a great coffee and some local produce supporting the local Wellington and Dubbo region as well. We also have a caravan park on site, so you can come and stay for a couple of days whilst you explore the caves and the new Visitor Experience Centre.
What major events do you have on the cards for the Wellington Caves in 2021?
Well, 2021 is actually the International Year of Caves and Karsts, so we have a number of events in the plan for celebrations of caves and karsts within Australia and internationally. One of those is actually an art event where locals and people from the wider region can celebrate caves by submitting an art piece, so watch out for more information on that one. But we also are hosting the ACMA General Meeting, which is the Australasian Caves and Karst Managers Association. So we're hoping to have people right around the country come to Wellington Caves to share stories and management practices for caves in Australia and the wider region. But most excitingly, we are hoping to open our megafauna room, which is due to open at the end of April, the start of May. And this will be an interactive space in our Visitor Experience Centre where you can learn more about Australian megafauna and the significance of the Wellington Caves.
Well done, Julie and Michelle. All the best for the new year ahead, and thank you for joining us. Don't forget, you can find out more about the Old Dubbo Jail and the Wellington Caves complex by visiting our website. The Central West has never looked busier. There's a constant stream of vehicles along Dubbo's Macquarie Street, cyclists and walkers along the Track O'Reilly, and hoteliers reporting they're all booked out. While the boost to business and a booming tourism industry are welcome, we also need to be vigilant to keep the ongoing COVID-19 threat at bay.
From Ghost Town in early 2020 to Boxing Day, we're back in the shops, but we're far from back to normal.
It's a changing, evolving situation for us. We've got to, in fact, be very strategic in how we've handled the pandemic and how we've, in fact, developed our capacity to meet the challenges of the pandemic.
While the region remains open for business, the recent detection of the virus in Orange in a traveller from Sydney was a wake-up call.
It's good to see people come to the region. It's good for us to, in fact, be open for business, but at the same time we have to be very cautious. Look, we've in fact adapted for the new Service New South Wales app on all our facilities, so we in fact are able to trace who comes in and who in fact has been part of our various facilities.
Other measures include maintaining appropriate social distancing, having hand sanitizer located throughout the building, and getting a COVID test even with the mildest symptoms.
There are 3 COVID testing clinics in Dubbo, including this one in the RSL car park, and you don't need a doctor's referral.
It'll probably take years for it to in fact really wash through, but at the end of the day we're quite a resilient group of people in Dubbo, and as a result of it we can get through this as quickly as anyone else can get through it.
keep updated through the New South Wales Health website. Emily Wheeler, DRC News.
This time last year, the region was enduring the peak of another consecutive year of drought. The national bushfire threat was worsening and the region's water supply was critically low. By the end of the first quarter of 2020, the weather situation was beginning to change and the region was seeing rain. That rain remained steady throughout 2020, with weather forecasters pointing to the effect of La Nina across Australia. To talk a little more about what our region can expect for the summer months, I'm joined by Tom Saunders, Chief Meteorologist and Channel Manager from Sky News Weather. Tom, thank you so much for joining us. We really have seen a big shift in the region's weather compared to the past few years. All indications are pointing to the effect of La Nina. What's this mean for summer in the Dubbo region?
Well, we certainly have seen a turnaround over the past 12 months. Already this summer, Dubbo's picked up 170 millimetres of rain, and that's already well above what we picked up 12 months ago. Now, we're still expecting rainfall to be above average over the next 6 weeks, although in the short term, so over the next week, we're not expecting any significant rain across the Dubbo region. But the rain, it should return late January and through February, so a continuation of what we've already seen for Dubbo over the last few months. Now, because of the extra cloud cover across Australia right now, we're seeing daytime temperatures well below what we saw over the past few years. For example, Dubbo, so far this summer, the average maximum's only been just above 30 degrees compared to last summer where we averaged 34.5 degrees. So for the rest of the season, to sum it up for Dubbo, we're expecting cooler and wetter weather compared to the last few years.
Certainly will be welcome this time of year. Well, drought conditions certainly lingered for several years. We endured the worst drought on record until things eased last year, and we're likely to see an extended period of cooler, wet weather return before we return to dry, hot and even drought conditions. Is that right?
Yeah, look, it was a huge turnaround through 2020. Dubbo picked up 843 millimetres of rain last year. That was around 4 times 2019. Now, 2019, it was actually the driest year on record for Dubbo, and we've got data back 150 years worth of data. So it was a huge record to break. But thanks to a La Nina phase of the Pacific Ocean that developed in spring, that rainfall returned closer to normal or even above average through 2020. Now, La Nina refers to the cooling of the sea surface temperatures in the central equatorial Pacific. Now, the atmosphere responds to that change in the oceans and it pushes humid easterly winds from the Pacific Ocean across Australia. And that's what brings the rainfall. The current La Nina more than likely has now peaked. So even though it's starting to weaken though, the atmosphere is still responding. And that's why we're expecting over at least another 2 to 3 months, we'll have wetter than average conditions across the Dubbo region. Your typical La Nina though will break down during the autumn. And then the critical stage of the year is winter. That's when the Indian Ocean or the Pacific Ocean may transition into a new phase. We're just going to have to wait and see. But it's worth noting that roughly 50% of La Ninas are back-to-back events. So there is a good chance the good rains will continue through 2021.
Well, major national flooding events of 1955, 1988, 98 and 2010 were all associated with La Nina. So how's 2021 shaping up insofar as flooding for the region due to rain throughout the eastern states?
Well, the current La Nina, it's not as intense as the last one we saw around 10 years ago that was quite a strong event. This is a moderate strength La Nina. Also, the current La Nina, it's not supported by the Indian Ocean, and that's why the rainfall and the flooding through the last few months has not been as widespread as what we saw back in 2010 and 2011. Having said that, the wet season is only halfway through, so there's every chance over the next 2 to 3 months a tropical low or tropical moisture could move south and bring widespread major flooding to New South Wales, especially now that the catchments are becoming quite saturated. Now, the risk of widespread flooding generally eases back for inland New South Wales as we move into winter, but there'd still be the risk of some localised flooding. It's very difficult to forecast, though, anymore than around 2 weeks out.
All very interesting information. Thank you so much for joining us, Tom Saunders from Sky News Weather. Don't forget you can keep up to date with all the weather on Sky's Weather Channel, as well as updates and forecasts on Sky News on WIN. This time last year, Burrendong Dam was brought to its knees, crippled by the drought crisis. With improved rainfall in recent months, water levels are steadily rising. But has there been enough rain to quench its thirst?
Whether releasing the bandit on the waves or patiently waiting for a bite. Both thrill and fish seekers have returned to the waters of Burrendong Dam, where barely a splash would have been made last year.
Look, at the end of February, Burrendong Dam was less than 1.5% of capacity. So we were certainly in the teeth of a very severe drought crisis, probably the most severe water security crisis with respect to Burrendong Dam that we've experienced in the Macquarie Valley.
12 months ago, Burrendong Dam was down to the last dregs, with inflows about 2/3 lower than the history books say was the worst ever. But the dam is making a comeback, with the El Niño weather event helping to top up water levels to 42% and rising.
Hopefully with a La Niña forecast until the end of summer, that's going to have a favourable impact on the dam. But in the summer months, it really is dependent on the catchment as much as the weather forecast. So if the catchment's allowed to dry out in between rain events, it's very, very difficult to get significant inflows that really make a difference to the dam storage level.
With the water level at Burrendong Dam hovering around 40%, which is about the capacity of Sydney Harbour. The question is the dam half full or half empty?
So certainly half full, certainly much better off than we were, but really looking for that storage to continue to climb before we feel like we're out of the woods yet.
Sinead Fogarty, DRC News.
With domestic water use significantly higher in summer than in winter and the risk of returning to hot, dry conditions just around the corner, it's important residents are able to keep track of their taps. Now, more and more residents are able to do just that as Council hits the halfway mark of the smart water meter rollout across the Dubbo region.
It's the clever device helping us be wise with our water. Almost 1 in 2 properties in Dubbo now have a smart water device, allowing residents to see the data behind every drop.
Yeah, these water meter devices go beyond billing. They're really useful for detecting leaks, monitoring water use behaviour, seasonal variations in water use, all of which will greatly help Dubbo Regional Council and the community manage this precious resource.
This week, after a Christmas break, the rollout of almost 18,000 residential water meters and about 2,500 non-residential meters recommenced across the Dubbo region. Local contractors, Inland Plumbing and Gas, are set to deliver more than 50% of the remaining project.
Yeah, so the benefit of employing locally trained contractors is they're able to help us keep this project on track during these troubling times. They're readily available to help troubleshoot any unforeseen issues, and we're employing locals.
The rollout is on track to be finished by June this year, and once complete, each resident across the Dubbo region connected to town water will easily be able to monitor their water usage online.
Kelsey Galea, DRC News.
We all remember the dust storms across our region from last year, and in recent months we've witnessed some intense light and sound shows thanks to Mother Nature. Of course, the latter part of each year and the first quarter of the new year has traditionally been storm season. Drought conditions mostly saw a pause on storms over recent years. But joining me now from the SES State Emergency Services headquarters in Wollongong to discuss storm season for the Dubbo region is SES Commissioner Carleen York. Commissioner, what's the role of the SES when it comes to storms?
Hello, Annabelle. We're the main primary response for those storms, floods and also tsunamis under the legislation. So this season is very busy for us with storm season. So we're the ones that take the calls, and we're supported by other emergency service partners.
Have your crews across our region and outlying regions been kept busy with storms and heavy rainfall over the past few months?
Yes, particularly over the last 6 weeks, just before Christmas, we've been extremely busy, all the way up the north coast, out the western area where you are, and a little bit about the metropolitan area with storms. There's been some significant floods. There's been significant weather in Queensland, forcing the rains down the rivers as well, which obviously goes into the western part of New South Wales. So our crews have been out very, very busy over this Christmas New Year period, supporting the community, particularly with a lot of trees down, leaking roofs, and over the last few weeks we've done nine flood rescues as well, which has been quite concerning that people drive through floodwaters. So we've been busy, very busy.
Definitely, and people in the country often have a bit of a reluctance to put their hand up for help, but When should people contact the SES if a storm or other disaster affects their place?
Yeah, country people are fairly resilient and have been through a lot of these weather events over the years. But we encourage people, one is to be prepared. We have a lot of information on our website. Get your property prepared. There's a lot of information about how to prepare your animals. Have a kit ready to go if you do need to evacuate. Listen to the communication channels we put out, particularly through the ABC radio, the councils, traffic sites and our website, to let people know what the weather's going to be like. And then don't think twice about it. If we're saying that you need to be ready to evacuate, please be prepared. And then if there is an evacuation order, take notice of it, because there is a chance that that weather will be significant and your property or your lives can be put in danger. So the country people, as I say, are resilient. They've been through it before, they're prepared, but just listen to those messages, and it is important that we get the community to do what we encourage them to do, particularly over the last storm season. It's been very encouraging with people preparing, getting sandbags for those expectant floodings, and that's really a good positive message that we're getting back from the community, that they are heeding our messages.
Very important messages indeed. The SES covers the entire state. How are you going for members in the Dubbo region? Are you looking for any new recruits? And if so, how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, we're always looking for new recruits, and we've been overwhelmed, particularly with the SES helping the bushfires. There's been a lot of people in the community coming forward and volunteering for their emergency services. This is a particularly busy time for us. We do want volunteers, but it's not always just in relation to getting on roofs and tarping those roofs or cutting down trees or being in the flood boats. They're very important roles that the SES take, but there are administrative roles, logistics, and we supply those areas that are cut off from the community, and there's lots of jobs that we need volunteers to help, particularly in communications, for example, and public information officers. So anyone can apply to be a volunteer for the SES. It's all on our website. Please feel free to have a look at that website and contact us if you want to progress. And I have been to the Dubbo unit. They're a great unit out there. So I'm sure people will get a lot of interest from our unit members if they contact them, and they will be very well rewarded, because it is about helping your local community to make sure they're safe.
We certainly do thank all of the New South Wales SES volunteers for what they do, and while the wetter weather is certainly welcome after years of drought across the region, we hope the remainder of this storm season is kinder to us all. Thanks, Commissioner York, for joining us.
Thanks very much.
Well, that brings us to the end of our first DRC News Bulletin. We'll be back in a fortnight with the next bulletin. In the meantime, if your organisation works closely with council or meets in a council facility and you'd like to share some of the work and activities your group is doing, drop us a line. If you've got a project or initiative underway that's improving the region's lifestyle or improving the community's way of life in the region, we'd love to hear from you too. Drop us a line at drctv@dubbo.nsw.gov.au. Thanks for joining us. From all of us at Council, see you next time.